We start with the M1 Garand, the standard infantry rifle of the United States Army and the primary weapon of the American paratrooper on D-Day. 8 rounds of 30-06 Springfield in a self-loading action that gave every American soldier a rate of fire that bolt-action opponents simply couldn't match. General George Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, and the paratroopers who carried it into Normandy proved him right in the hedgerows and fields of France. The M1A1 carbine, the folding stock variant, specifically designed for airborne troops who needed a compact, lightweight weapon that could survive a parachute jump without snacking on equipment. Lighter than the Garand, easier to handle in the cramped spaces of a C-47, and accurate enough for the ranges at which most paratroopers would be fighting in the first hours after landing. The Thompson M1A1 submachine gun, the iconic American weapon that paratroopers carried for close quarters fighting in the Bocage country and village streets of Normandy. Firing .45 ACP from a 30-round magazine, it was heavy and its range was limited, but at the distances where paratroopers found themselves fighting in the darkness of D-Day night, nothing hit harder or more decisively. The M3 grease gun, a cheaper and lighter alternative to the Thompson that some paratroopers carried, stamped steel, simple and reliable enough to function even after a rough landing in a French field. Ugly by any standard, but ugliness never stopped a .45 ACP round from doing its job. The Springfield 1903 A4 sniper rifle, carried by designated marksmen within paratrooper units for precision fire against enemy command posts, vehicle drivers, and crew-served weapon operators. Bolt action in an era of semi-automatics, but with a Weaver 330 C-scope mounted, capable of first-round hits at ranges that no other weapon in the paratrooper's arsenal could match. Moving to support weapons, because a paratrooper unit landing behind enemy lines needed the ability to destroy vehicles, suppress fortified positions, and hold ground against counterattacks without any external support. The Browning Automatic Rifle, or BAR, the automatic rifle that gave paratrooper squads a belt-equivalent volume of fire from a weapon light enough for one man to carry and operate. 20 rounds of .306, firing at up to 600 rounds per minute, the weapon that an entire squad maneuvered around because wherever the bar went, fire superiority followed. The M19-19A4 Browning machine gun, a belt-fed .30 caliber machine gun that paratrooper units carried in limited numbers for fixed defensive positions and fire support. Heavy, crew-served, and difficult to jump with, but once established in a defensive position, capable of stopping a German counterattack cold. The M2 .50 caliber machine gun, carried by some paratrooper units for anti-vehicle and anti-aircraft defense, the weapon that could reach out and stop anything the Germans sent against a lightly armed airborne perimeter. The M1A1 bazooka, a 2-man rocket launcher that gave paratroopers their primary anti-armor capability against the German tanks and half-tracks that would inevitably move to destroy isolated airborne units. 3.5 pounds of rocket, 60 millimeters of diameter, and enough shaped charge to penetrate the armor of any German vehicle likely to be encountered in Normandy, the paratroopers' answer to the tank threat. The M18 recoilless rifle, a lightweight artillery substitute that some paratrooper units carried for direct fire support against fortified positions that small arms couldn't reduce. Light enough to jump with, powerful enough to destroy a bunker, the kind of weapon that changes the tactical situation the moment it opens fire. Now, personal weapons, the sidearms and close-quarters tools that paratroopers carried as their last line of defense when everything else was gone or empty. The Colt M1911A1, the .45 caliber pistol that American forces had carried since 1911 and that paratroopers trusted absolutely for the moments when a rifle was too long, too heavy, or already empty. 7 rounds of .45 ACP in a package that fit in a holster and drew in under a second. Not enough ammunition for a sustained fight, but more than enough to end one at close range. The Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife, carried by many American paratroopers for silent killing, cutting parachute lines, and close quarters combat in the darkness where a gunshot would reveal a position. Designed by two former Shanghai municipal police officers who had more experience with real knife fighting than almost anyone alive, it was a purpose-built killing tool with no pretense of being anything else. The V-42 Stiletto, a specialized fighting knife issued to some American Special Operations paratroopers, featuring a double-edged blade and a skull crusher pommel designed for silent elimination of sentries. The most brutally functional knife in the American arsenal, designed for one purpose and perfectly suited to it. The M2 Switchblade, a gravity knife that paratroopers carried specifically to cut themselves free of parachute lines, harnesses, and equipment that could entangle and drown a man landing in water or hang him from a tree. Not a weapon, but potentially more important than any weapon, because a paratrooper who couldn't free himself from his parachute was a dead paratrooper before the fight even began. Moving to grenades and explosive devices, the tools that gave individual paratroopers the ability to clear bunkers, destroy vehicles, and create chaos in German rear areas on the night of June 5th. The Mk2 fragmentation grenade, the classic American pineapple grenade that every paratrooper carried into Normandy. A cast iron body filled with TNT, a 5-second fuse, and 250 fragments traveling at supersonic speed, the most personal artillery piece ever issued to an individual soldier. The M18 smoke grenade, carried for signaling, obscuring movement, and marking drop zones and objectives for aircraft and supporting units. In the chaos of a combat jump at night, the ability to mark a position with colored smoke was often the difference between being supported and being abandoned. The Gammon grenade, also known as the number 82 grenade, a British-designed plastic explosive device that American paratroopers adopted for its versatility against both personnel and vehicles. A sock filled with plastic explosive and a simple impact fuse, primitive in appearance but devastatingly effective against vehicle tracks, engine compartments, and anything else that needed to be destroyed quickly. The M1A1 anti-tank mine, carried by combat engineers within paratrooper units for rapid emplacement on roads and tracks to stop German armored counterattacks. One mine, correctly placed, could stop an entire armored column, because even a tank commander who loses his lead vehicle to a mine doesn't know where the next one is buried. The C2 demolition charge, blocks of composition C2 plastic explosive that combat engineers carried for destroying bridges, railroad tracks, fuel depots, and communications infrastructure behind German lines. The strategic purpose of the D-Day airborne operation in a single package: cut the roads, destroy the bridges, isolate the beach defenders, and prevent reinforcement. Now, the equipment, because surviving a combat jump, navigating in darkness, and fighting for days without resupply required more than weapons. The T-5 parachute, the main parachute that carried American paratroopers from 1,200 feet over Normandy to the fields and hedgerows below. 28 feet of silk canopy, a static line deployment system, and enough drag to slow a man from terminal velocity to a survivable landing speed. The single most important piece of equipment any paratrooper wore. The reserve parachute, worn on the chest for emergency deployment if the main chute failed, and at 1,200 feet over a hostile drop zone, there was almost no altitude to use it. The M1 steel helmet with airborne modifications, featuring a reinforced chin strap system that kept the helmet on a paratrooper's head through the opening shock of a parachute deployment. Standard infantry helmets had a tendency to be torn off by parachute opening shock. The modified chin strap was a small change that saved countless concussions and lives on the night of June 5th. The musette bag, a simple canvas pack that paratroopers wore in addition to their main equipment for carrying extra ammunition, rations, medical supplies, and mission-essential equipment. Every ounce mattered. The average American paratrooper on D-Day carried between 60 and 90 pounds of equipment, often more than his own body weight, making the jump itself physically exhausting before the fighting even began. The individual first aid kit, containing morphine syrettes, sulfa powder, bandages, and a tourniquet, the minimum equipment needed to keep a wounded paratrooper alive long enough to reach more advanced medical care. In an era before battlefield medicine had developed its modern protocols, these basic supplies represented the difference between surviving a wound and bleeding out in a Norman field. The SCR-536 handy-talkie radio, carried by unit commanders for short-range communication in the immediate aftermath of the jump, when units were scattered across miles of French countryside. Prone to interference, limited in range, and difficult to operate while also carrying weapons and equipment. But in the darkness of D-Day night, any communication was infinitely better than none. Moving to identification and navigation, because American paratroopers landing in darkness and unfamiliar terrain needed ways to identify friend from foe and find their objectives without maps or landmarks. The Cricket Clicker, a simple metal toy that American paratroopers used as a challenge and response identification system in the darkness. One click demanded 2 clicks in return, and the wrong response could mean a bullet. Primitive, simple, and potentially life-saving, in the darkness of occupied France, where German soldiers sometimes wore captured American uniforms, the Cricket was the difference between a friendly greeting and a firefight. The Escape and Evasion Kit, a small package containing a silk map, a compass, foreign currency, and basic survival tools issued to paratroopers in case they were separated from their units and needed to evade capture. The assumption embedded in its design was sobering, that a significant number of paratroopers would find themselves alone, behind enemy lines, needing to survive and evade without support. The Luminous Compass, a wrist-mounted navigation tool that paratroopers use to orient themselves after landing, because in the darkness of a French field with no landmarks and no unit, knowing which direction was north was the first step toward surviving. The Tactical Map of Normandy, waterproofed and carefully studied before the jump, because a paratrooper who knew his objectives and the terrain around them could fight effectively even when separated from his unit. The average American paratrooper who jumped into Normandy on the night of June 5, 1944, was 19 years old. He carried more weight than most men could lift, jumped into darkness over a defended coastline, landed in fields he had never seen, and fought for days without resupply against an enemy that outnumbered him significantly. Every weapon and every piece of equipment on this list was there for a reason, chosen by men who understood that what a soldier carries determines what a soldier can do. And what the American paratroopers of D-Day did with these weapons and this equipment changed the course of human history. Every single item on this list earned its place that night.